going to come to an inevitable end. Because look at that. As if right on time. There you go. It's noon, Eastern Standard Time. Woo! I am excited for today. We are in part 2 of the PoPers talking about pie crust. And I am actually going to make 2 pie fillings, a cherry and an apple. I'm going to fill frozen crust that I've already egg washed. I'm going to show you how to bake a turkey pot pie right away, which is in the fridge. I moved it from the freezer about 10 minutes ago, and I turned the oven on, so we should be hearing the temperature coming up. And that's going to bake the entire time we are on the live. And what else? I baked one of my tops. I made a crumble, so I'm going to show you as much as I can. Just very relaxed and easy. Because even if you don't bake, you are an eater, and you should be able to discern what is a good pie, what's good crust, what are the earmarks, what are you looking for? I know, isn't it exciting? I'll show it to you again. And it's not even that great because when I put it in the oven wasn't completely hot. And when you put pastry, especially a cold pastry, and the reason it needs to be cold is because when I put that in the oven, it melted, the butter melted out, which just means it was melting versus steaming because you need to have high heat. So it melted a bit, but it got kind of crunchy. And what I'm going to do with that is break it in half and show you what crusts look like from the inside. And that's a flaky crust because remember on Wednesday I told everybody you need to have a flaky crust for the top. And a flaky crust is the first roll. There's my oven. And my oven's a liar because I know for darn that's not 350. I know it's probably around 300 maybe if I'm lucky, and I don't even need to check. I'm just going to wait and eventually I'll go check. But I'm going to take my pot pie and get that in the oven right away. And then I'm going to do a bunch of stuff. And I have right here, you can see, my list of stuff to do. I painted that wall with some dry erase paint in clear. And I use it as my dry erase board and I love it. And those flowers up there, I actually draw and I print out on like reseal, peel off paper, and I can take them off because I rent, so I can't leave anything on the walls. All ovens lie, Eli. I think if, professional ovens don't necessarily have a buzzer that tell you when they're like to temp, but the home does, and that's kind of silly. All right, so I'm gonna get started right away so we can kind of keep it moving, but I'll show you. Well, we'll do the fit check first. I'll clean everything up, and then I'm gonna pull my pie. It's a pot pie. I made a video of my turkey back at Thanksgiving, okay? I love my farmer, and I always put in for like a range, and honest to God, last Thanksgiving, it was just Dave and I. And I said something like a 12 to 15 pound turkey, and I ended up getting, I forget, it was like 20 pounds. So I was like, that's fine. I ended up making like 6 or 7 turkey pot pies. And the video I made, some people were like, that looks dry, but that's because I bake my pies for so long because I like to roast them. And by the time I was done roasting them, it was dark. So I just let that, the pie got like dry looking, but honestly, when we ate it, it was super moist. Yeah, I love drawing flowers. I don't know if you guys know I love flowers. And actually, let me just flip this around. I do drawing and I do it on my Procreate, on my iPad. And it's because, I love making sugar flowers, but I draw. And what I found is learning how to use Procreate, that I could make these intensely 3-dimensional centers, like way more detailed than I can do on a piece of paper. So yeah, I have a lot of pieces. So then I cut them out, which is therapeutic. You guys know me, you know I love all the therapy, and there's what we're gonna do today. Isn't that great? So that is and you can kind of see where the gloss ends. You can see that right here. That to the right is a clear dry erase paint. And I do that. And in fact, I will show you. We'll do a quick walk around here. Here are my ingredients for the day. I'm going to be doing an apple pie with a few tricks I'm going to show you. A cherry pie with a few tricks I'm going to show you. An egg wash. I'm going to talk about ingredients and tools. And then we have my little Lou here. He's joining us today. Hi, Lou. Are you tired? Can you introduce Lammy? That's his friend Lammy. And these are pumpkin seedlings. I've never done seedlings in my life, and I used to be a huge gardener. And my friend brought a pumpkin from Wisconsin. I brought the pumpkin, ate and cooked all the seeds. It said it was good seed eating. So then my friend went to the farm the next year, bought the pumpkin, harvested the seeds, and then it took a couple people to get it here because people kept forgetting, which is hilarious. And then I planted them, and I didn't know how to do it, and now I've got guys growing. So I'm going to have these pumpkins this fall. And then I have a little succulent garden. I love planting things in kitchen type accoutrement, which is a nice strainer. They love it. The little guys come through the sides, and they love, succulents love a strainer. So if you're looking for something in your kitchen to be really cute, great idea, but you need a ton of sunlight. So then behind my desk, I have this peel and stick frame, and on it, you guessed it, I have dry erase paint. So I can use that as a memo board. Books, all my books. I don't know if some of you guys haven't been here, but I have a ton of books in my library. A lot of my artwork is kind of kitschy and funny. And Lou right now, Lou is going to his second dog bed. Are you going to go lay down, Lou? Lay down. Get up. Get up. Good job. He's going to take a nap. He's out. He does not want to be on camera. And then over here, I just highlight some of my work and things I'm proud of. And I have a sense of humor about the kitchen. And this is an IKEA chair I sit on quite often. You can see my butt imprint. And this is my kitchen with more books. That is a sifter painting my husband Dave, who's our moderator, bought for me years ago for Christmas. It was a huge surprise. Love it. Absolutely gorge. That is a window I had turned into a mirror from a home we owned, very old. And here's my speed rack. And if you don't have a speed rack, I'm telling you, it's life-changing. So here we go. This is where I work. I will close this. I've already got my hair back. This is my kettle, my scaling station, my deli cups. And this is where I keep all my sort of extra things I need close by and my compost. All right, so you guys got an early tour, and then we can move on to the work of the day. I also have a half speed rack, which is out there. And if you think you don't have room for a speed rack, I am telling you, you could put it in the next room, outside your garage if you have a kitchen with the garage off of it. So you can just pull from it. It is the storage solution you're looking for. It can go into a closet. I would rather have a speed rack than shelves because they're movable, changeable, life-changing, and they're very narrow, and you can actually buy some that are really narrow, but you have to go to a restaurant supply store to talk about that. All right, so here's my fit check today. This is like a one-piece suit. I've got my clogs on, and no jewelry, short nails, no jewelry, my hair's back, and I've got my glasses on. I finally have an appointment at the doctor. I have reading glasses, so these are progressives, and I've never worn glasses in my life. I hate them with the passion of 1,000 suns. So I'm gonna ask if I can get contacts because that would really help me in the kitchen. This is my dream room, and I am telling you right now, this is under threat because our landlord may or may not be renewing our lease because he may or may not be completely either gutting or tearing this building down. So I'm just trying to enjoy it as much as I possibly can. If you guys were here on Wednesday, you heard the story about the ants. Well, we had an exterminator come, and the hilarious thing is I haven't seen one since then, but it's gotten cold again. So he took care of it and everything, and I learned a lot about it. He found the nest, and hopefully they're gone because it was terrible. Percolated Coffee Bean says, my husband had to get rid of his progressive. Stairs were a nightmare. You know what? That's so funny you say that because when I got these, I have to go down kind of wonky stairs to get home because we live right there and I go back and forth all day. And the first time I put them on, I almost fell and I didn't use them for a year. I was like, I'm done. So, and my brain didn't like them, but I put them back on and they were life-changing. I was able to work and sort of not have to have my readers all the time. So I'm addicted to these now, but your brain has to catch up. So now I'm ready to take the leap and get the contacts. I'm going to get my apron on, and I've already wiped my counter and cleaned it, but I'm going to sanitize it. I have a brand new clean towel and dish towel. I like to use towels, and you want to call them rags or towels, dish towels, for one day, and then I wash them. So I buy a lot of them. They're all white. They're cheap. And I go through them quickly, but I don't like to keep them around forever. I just like everything to be clean. Okay, so here we go. I'm gonna turn the light on. I'm gonna sanitize this and then I'm going to pull out, oops, let me get my notes. Ugh. I'm gonna pull out the turkey pot pie from Thanksgiving. So I ended up making, I don't know, 6 pies and I have 2 left. And ideally you wanna bake those within 3 months of making them because ideally for quality's sake, you want anything that you freeze, you want to eat within 3 months. That's just for quality, not safety. And this is just a Lysol wipe, just so that I can make sure that anything I did here does not cause cross-contamination if I have any raw egg or anything that's going to cause a problem. And so you clean, but you can also sanitize. It's very important. Whew, thanks, Jessica. I try to be really clean. You got a lot of people out there that are gotchas. You might catch me occasionally. But, you know, your apron should be in the kitchen. If you go to the bathroom, you should take it off. If you're in a restaurant and you see a server or someone in the bathroom with their apron on, you probably don't want to eat there. And if you work at a restaurant, don't wear your apron outside. Just stay in the kitchen. Because it's supposed to keep you clean and it's supposed to be sanitary. So, and for those of you who don't know, I teach and proctor sanitation. So, yeah, I'm kind of a weirdo, but that's kind of my shtick. All right, so let me get my pie. It's very exciting. I have so much in here. Okay. So this pie I made right after Thanksgiving, and I took this gigantic turkey and I made a video of it. It's under like savory food on a playlist. Took all the turkey off of the turkey, all the meat, the dark, everything. And then I sauteed up a bunch of vegetables, and I like the inside of my pot pie to kind of look like the frozen banquet style, like the frozen kind you get at the grocery store. So I cut my carrots into little cubes and I buy frozen peas because I think that's cute. But I added a ton of pepper. I try to keep my sodium low. I made a gravy. I made a roux with some corn, or actually I used flour and milk. And then I stir it all together, and then I make my crusts and I go through and fill them. And then some people have asked, why don't I wrap my doughs when I put them in the fridge? You want to put your doughs, once you roll them, into the refrigerator to firm up, and then you can wrap and cover them. But you don't want to leave them a long time because they'll dry out, time, temperature, and moisture. But you want to leave them in there long enough that the butter firms up, and then you can wrap them so they won't get dinged. So this is our dinner tonight. And basically, I want to show you in real time what it's like to roast a pie. Yes, Berta, lab coats should stay in the lab. And I just think it's insane that people don't know that. The second you leave your clean space that's very controlled, you're just cross-contaminating. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't work with a lot of meat, but if you see someone has this dirty, stained apron and then they're coming out into the dining room to pick up your dishes, it's like, whoa, it's cross-contamination. So yeah, it is sciencey, but it's also common sense in a way. So I have 2 layers of plastic because before this goes in the freezer, it's going to get wrapped twice. That keeps the air sealed, keeps moisture out, and it keeps the smells out and keeps it from drying out. You never want to put warm filling into a cold, you don't want to put warm filling into a pie in general. So when I made my turkey filling, I chilled it completely, put each prepared shell onto a scale, filled it with a certain amount of filling, and then I gave it a double crust, okay? The double crust is the top crust. And I made slits after I egg washed. So once I put the top on, I egg washed once, let it dry for 5 minutes, egg washed it a second time, cut the slits in one direction because this is a flaky crust. And if you cut it and go back and forth or do the egg wash after, you seal up that edge. And instead of being flaky, it's going to be sealed and it's going to end up not being pretty. So we'll see how this looks as it bakes. So this is my pot pie. It's frozen. It's very cold. But because I had it in the fridge for like 10 minutes, this is the bottom and that's the top. See the egg wash? Do you see the difference? Look at that. So I talked a lot about doing a pre-bake or a par bake on my pies. And in this case, I do not par bake this pot pie because it's going to go in an oven that has a stone. So I have a baking stone. It's stunning, isn't it, Pascal? Look at that. It's gorgeous. I love it. I'm so excited to eat it. So I have a baking, and I'll show you, but I have a baking stone with a tray and a parchment. And that is intended so that when this goes on here, and this is so cold, that heat's going to go right through the metal. If I have glass or ceramic or porcelain, it's going to go through there slower. But because I know the heat's going to transfer quickly, I know that bottom crust is going to get a good burst of heat, which is going to give it the poof and the puff that it needs, and it will also darken. As soon as this pie begins to turn even a little bit brown, I'm going to turn the oven from 350 down to 295. And it's literally going to sit there until I'm ready. And you can bake it as dark as you like. And if there's only one thing you take away today, is a dark bake is where the flavor is. If you're eating things that are not baked all the way, you're missing out on so many flavor molecules. I don't even know how many, like a lot. So if you don't have a stone, I recommend you can do a baking steel, but I definitely think you should put this on a pan. And if you can get a baking stone, they are not expensive. But you want to put it in when you preheat. So it goes in first, then you preheat the oven. And I don't necessarily want to put this right on the stone because that could crack the stone. It's too much of a difference in, temperature. But I really recommend them because in the professional kitchen, the best oven is the bread oven that has the heat on the bottom, because that's what a pie needs. It needs that heat from underneath to really activate the crust and then heat up the inside. This is going to get bubbly. And the reason I put it on a tray with parchment is because as it starts to spill over, which my apple pies do, my cherry pies do, I love a fruit pie that spills over, it's going to catch the mess. So you have heat transfer, you have length of time that it's cooking, you start with high heat, and then you slow it down because you don't want to over brown everything while the inside isn't cooking. So you get it going and then you slow it down and you roast it like you would a nice piece of meat. If the heat is built into the bottom of your oven, you're good to go. All right, so I'm going to go put this in and then I'm going to come back and get the camera and show you the setup that I have, okay? So here I go. All right, turn the oven on. And then as a reminder, this is just a habit I have, and I'm really into habits. No matter what I'm cooking, no matter what I'm baking, I set the timer for 20 minutes. It builds in my brain knowing what time means, and you can wait for signs of something being cooking. You can smell it, maybe you can hear it, things like that. But I just like to go with that 20-minute mark, whether I'm doing brownies or whatever. And shorter if obviously it's something I need to do shorter. But let's see. Timers are great. They do not tell you when something is done. They tell you something's in the oven. And I would have students literally flip out and say, no, it's done, it's done, it's done. And I would say, no, we're going to decide if it's done. And I also tell you, I went to a bakery once where I said, what's the deal with your ovens? And they said, oh, we lock them. I said, why do you lock them? And they said, because we don't want our bakers deciding when something's done. And I was like, okie dokie. So we need to know when it's done, but the timer is imperative for making sure we don't forget something's in there. All right, so I'm going to come and I'm going to show you what's going on in my oven. I'm going to flip the camera. This is what I'm looking at today. It's a dreary-ish day, very cold and windy, but I'm okay with it. Spring is on its way. All right, so this is just a regular old home oven. It's propane, and I'm going to open the oven, but underneath is the stone, and I've had this stone for 15 years. And that is a half sheet tray with the parchment. And I'm going to show you what it looks like. Okay. So instead of letting the butter in the dough melt, we want that temperature to be hot enough that it begins to steam the water that lives in the butter and get it moving. So we'll come back and check it when it gets a little brown. So we will keep it moving. Yeah, the pizza stones are cheap, but you can also get steel. Anything that's going to hold the heat that when you put your baked good on it, because I use it for things that I really want the heat to come through and really give me good heat transfer, because this is a cookie in the oven with convection. The convection is air. This is a cookie on a rack with no convection, just baking. The heat's going to come from kind of all around. And if you move your thing up, it's going to get more heat up here. And if you move it low, the heat's going to be below. But if you use a stone and heat it up, this is hot. anything you put on there is going to get direct heat transfer. When I bake cookies, I take another pan and I put it underneath halfway through so that bottom doesn't get too dark. But in this case, I want the bottom dark. So when we look at what are our outcome goals with a pie, we want the bottom crust to be baked all the way through when we break it in half. We want the top to be golden. We want the interior to be bubbly and wonderful. So we're looking for a lot to happen, and that takes a lot of time. I don't know who says a pie should be baked in 35 minutes, but like I said, I'm going to turn it down and roast it. I love roasting things because through time, you develop much better flavors. Yeah, it's like clay. Exactly. It's very heavy. Like I'm always really careful. It's clay and it is very heavy and theoretically it could crack because I could put something cold on there. I don't know if you've ever cracked pie racks where you put a cold one in the oven and it cracks. Terrible. But it's kind of the same thing, but I have never. I don't blind bake every crust. I blind bake them if it's like a pecan pie, which I know the filling is only going to take 30 minutes to bake. I have to blind bake it. But with the pot pie, I can roast it as long as I want. It's not going to dry out. I'm at a low temp, but I'm going to get that cooked by using the temperature, the time, and that heat transfer of the pizza stone to get it where I want it to be. So if you're getting a really dark crust, you need to turn the temperature down and let it roast because the crust, the inside, and the bottom all need to do their thing, and they'll all kind of have competing needs. So you have to think about how long does the middle take? How dark do I want the top? And do I want this? So if you really want the bottom cooked and the inside doesn't need a lot of time, you need to blind bake. Or if you just want to develop flavor. So, you know, like I just made a quiche, which I'm going to show you guys. All right, so let me get some stuff. So I'm going to make a couple of pies real quick. I'm going to fill them and show you how to do it. Let me get my ingredients. Okay. I have 2 frozen pie shells that have not been par baked because I'm making an apple and a cherry. And those can do exactly what the pot pie is doing. They can bake for a very, very long time. And I think I'll do the apple pie first. The apple pie is going to have a cinnamon crumble or streusel, which I already made. And the cherry pie is going to have a lattice crust, which I already made and egg washed. I have egg washed both of the shells around the edge, and I have egg washed the lattice for convenience for this. But I picked the cinnamon streusel because I like it with apple. And I chose the lattice for the cherry because cherry's so bright red and beautiful. And I think that a lattice is for beauty. It's just to show off. So why not do a really nice contrasty filling like a bright red cherry? So I have 2, and so the cherry bourbon recipe is out of Sister Pie, and my apple pie is just, it's been made thousands of times. It's a very basic filling, and my crust, which is on the link tree, is also very basic. There's no sugar in it. It's a neutral dough, all butter. And if you want to learn more about the one we made on Wednesday, which is the ones we're using today, go to YouTube and watch those videos. I edit them so you can watch them in like an hour and glean all of the information. Can I refrigerate dough ball, then roll out in the pan and bake with the filling immediately? Well, you know, I really like making the dough and rolling it out, getting it in the pan, chilling it, and then freezing it if I'm not going to use it. But anytime you do anything, before it goes in the oven, it needs to be cold. You can't bake a warm crust because it'll just melt out. So the answer is you can make a dough ball, but why not just roll it into a disc at the very least? Because then you're not over handling it. And I have videos about it. I have strong beliefs that the less you handle it, the better. So rather than form it into a ball, which irritates the gluten, and then refrigerate it, and then cool it again, warm it up, roll it out, just kind of make a plan so that it's a little more efficient. All right, so I'm gonna pay attention to this for 2 seconds. I'm ready to go. All right, so on my old-fashioned apple pie filling, I have apples, which are in the fridge. I will grab. I've lightly sprinkled them with lemon, so they shouldn't have browned or oxidized. So I have fresh lemon juice, which I just squeezed out. I do not recommend squeezing lemon juice in advance. It loses its acidity. I need 10 grams of lemon juice. I have sucrose or table sugar, 143 grams. For this recipe, I am using cornstarch, For my cherry pie, I'm using tapioca, and I will talk about the difference, but for the apple, I'm using cornstarch. Of course, I have some salt, a gram of salt to balance out all of the tart and the sweetness. And I have cinnamon, and you don't really want to scale out your cinnamon in advance either, and your cinnamon shouldn't be old. Cinnamon should be oily, and it should leave discoloration on your container. That's the oil, the essential oils in the cinnamon. Cinnamon, nutmeg, I'm going to do right like that from a nutmeg whole, which I love. And then I have butter. Where's the butter? Oh, here it is. Now, when you're making a pie, you want the butter to be cold, but the butter is going to be melted to make the filling. So I've had it out coming to room temperature. What about par baking the crust? I did just answer that, but the short answer is for the apple pie, I'm not par baking it because it's going to be roasted and the bottom will get baked very well during baking. Thank you. I have a lot of tips, and I used to run the baking sale for my students at the last school that I worked at. I mean, I ran the whole thing, and you know, we sold 500 of each, well, maybe more, of each pie flavor, and the students 100% made all of it. I didn't make it, I managed it, I taught it, and then they executed it, and they did an amazing job. So this recipe is really great in terms of it's been tested and it works. I have used clear gel, and that's kind of what I'll talk about when I get to the tapioca starch. So when you're looking at thickeners, you are looking at properties, and tapioca is going to give you a clearer, more clear gelled syrup, and it's not going to tinge the pretty red color. Not that cornstarch will, but it's a little bit different, and they work a little bit different. Clear gel is really nice, but I like to limit the number of ingredients I have around, so I use the tapioca because I reuse it. So I need 715 grams approximately of apples, and I make a lid. There's nothing there, but that's it. This is almond meal, which I may or may not use on the bottom of my crust, and I'll tell you why when I get there. But let me put these over here and grab my apples. These are my apples, and I've already prepped them. And so here's how I get ready. I'm gonna I think I'll do this. All right. So these are my apples, and they've been wrapped tightly, and this is the bowl that I will build my pie filling in, and I'm going to cut these. And you don't need to wear gloves when you're going to be cooking something further, only if it's ready to eat. And these are going to be baked, obviously. Let me check on my pie real quick. I can smell. Okay. So see, that was me smelling something and just wanting to check in. Your sense of smell tells you when things are baking, and it's way more effective than anything else you've got going on. Can we go heavy-handed on the lemon and cinnamon, or will that affect the results? I love that question. I go heavy on the lemon because I love lemon. It will affect the results, but maybe those are the results you want. We define the results we want. So yes, I follow this recipe. This isn't majorly cinnamon forward, but I want you to think about something, and let me grab it. This is the cinnamon streusel that I made. So I'm going to put cinnamon in the filling, but I'm also pairing it with cinnamon. So you think about your pie as not just one thing. You think of it, once it's on the plate, what's your whole dessert? I mean, a piece of pie can become a fancy plated dessert depending on how it's shaped, cut, and presented. So if I put cinnamon ice cream with the cinnamon streusel, I can layer in cinnamon. You can do whatever you want, but you need to think about your desired outcome and go toward that goal. That's how you make every decision based on your final goal. And I always say you should plan all this out in advance, even draw it out, because then every decision you make is like, oh, I want a cinnamon tart. I'm going to use more Granny Smith apples than I'm going to use sweet, blah, blah, like that. It goes on like that. All right, so here's what I'm going to show you. And if you ever stage, one thing they'll have you do is peel apples, okay? Let's see. I need this. When I peel apples, I wear a cut glove. Might sound wimpy, don't care. I've cut myself with peelers so many times. I wear a cut glove on the hand that I hold the apple, and I peel them all, and they go usually into a bowl of acidulated water. You can use lemon juice or white vinegar, but into acidulated water. However, if you leave them in there too long, they'll get mushy. So in this case, I cut them all this morning before I went and showered and got ready for the live, and then I just sprinkled and tossed a little bit of lemon juice on here. I cut all the apples like this. I cut off the little edges, and those parts just become a snack. So these are all squared off. When I slice these, I want them all to be the same thickness. Now, obviously, they might not all end up perfect, but I'm aiming for consistency so that as they bake, they remain consistent, okay? So I'm not going to use any more tricks to keep these from getting brown. The trick is, actually I think I'm going to get a bigger bowl, is to move quickly, and then I'm going to get this in a shell, finish it up, get it in the freezer, and then once it's frozen, I can wrap it up, label it, and then I'm going to bake this apple pie another day. So you guys can build these sorts of things into your schedule so that you're having fresh pie whenever the heck you want. You know how you can make little bitty pies. You know how I have nightly cookies? You could do nightly pies, like mini pies and ham pies and things. It's so easy to do. Let me grab a bigger bowl, which is in the other room. So give me 2 seconds. I apologize. I use these Cambro bowls. I have in all sizes and they're super convenient. Okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to work quickly, but I'm going to take my apples using my knife. Okay, so these are going to be cut about the same size. And you can tell, I'm pretty good. My knife skills are okay, but just to get them as close as possible. And when you work with your knife, this is how you hold a knife. And you should always have, the blade of the knife should always be on the board. You want to stand with loose knees and you want to work like this. And one way that you can get these to be the even size is to take a sample, and you can even, put it here and play with it until you get a better eye. But it's really just practice and experience. So let me go through these really quick. And I use 3 kinds of apples when I make a pie. And I don't use the fancy apples like, the ones that are popular that are very watery. Those are not meant for baking. Those are meant to be eaten and enjoyed. They're very poppy, like Honey Crisp and things like that. But I like to mix it up so that I have one really sweet apple, maybe firm, one tart, and then one in the middle. So I have 3 to 4 different varieties so that the flavor gets mixed up. I think that makes for a more interesting pie than using one kind. But if you use the kind of pie apple that, like an apple that gets too mushy, it will disintegrate in your pie. So you want to be really careful. So these don't all have to be the same length, but they have to be the same thickness. That is what will help with my baking. But I don't want these to disintegrate. And also, if you've ever made a pie and put a top on it and then it's completely sunk, that is partially, not always, many times due to the fact that the apples you chose are disintegrating. All right, there's really nothing to see, so I'm going to put it on for 15 more minutes, and I will show you when this starts to take on some color. So part of the reason I think that apple pies sink in the middle, and maybe, people put a lattice on there and they come back and there's that big air gap with a double crust and stuff. I believe it's number 1, the way that you pile your apples, and I will show you, I like to mound them in the center, but also I think it's because you're choosing apples that express so much moisture that they end up shrinking. So I think it's good to have a firm baking apple, and if you don't know what to buy, a quick, very cursory, simple Google search will answer all your questions. Now the other thing I want to say is, in our classroom, we would use apple slicers that peel and slice, and that's fine. Those work really well with conventional apples, because conventional apples, which is what we got at schools, all tend to be the same size and shape. But those machines, which I have, but they tend to not like organic or irregularly shaped apples, so I tend to not use them. However, if you do, they cut a really nice, even apple, but it's often also very thin. And so I like mine a little thicker and that kind of thing. They can also create a bit of waste and be a little frustrating, but if you're doing 500 apples, it really does save a lot of time. So those are my apples, and I'm going to show you how I finish and make a pie real quick. I am making an apple pie. I'm putting together one so that I can freeze it. We're talking about pie dough and pie making. And now that summer's coming, I mean, there's definitely a pie season, which I think is the fall, but in the summertime, fruit pies are lovely. I have some great videos on a rhubarb brown sugar pie, and I have a blueberry pie that's amazing. That's great. Freezing affects some of the baking, but for apples and cherries, like I'm going to show you right now, freezing is not going to. It's your friend. Your nieces and nephews are your holiday peeling machines. I love that. And you know, this is a great tool I would give to kids. My kids use this from King Arthur. It's a plastic, scraper. But what's great about this is it's good for cutting apples, and you can't cut yourself. And it's great for little kids if any of you have little kids out there, and it's like $1 from King Arthur. So I'm making this. So as you can see, I have a crust. I'll show you the crust, and then I'm going to put it back in the refrigerator, but I'm going to show you what I have. Okay. So this morning I pulled these are the crusts that we made on Wednesday, and I egg washed them this morning. And now they've been in the freezer. And I am going to take one of these shells and put my apple filling in it, put a top on it, put it back in the freezer, and when it's frozen solid, I'm going to wrap it and label it and save it to be baked another day. But these are the crusts that I made the other day, and I'm going to pick the one that to me has a smaller, larger diameter. This one seems thicker, but I'm going to make this one the apple because the cherry is getting the lattice, and I know that the lattice fits this. So I put parchment between so that I can stack them, and you can literally stack however many of these you want, and so it takes up less space in your refrigerator or your freezer. And I don't know if you can tell, so then these are going to go back in the freezer. This is going back in the freezer while I work because I don't want this to get soft. So let me put it in the freezer. And I'm going to mix the filling for you. So when you bake from frozen, just follow the steps I've told you about, using a pizza stone, thinking about the heat transfer, using high heat and then turning it down. There are pies you cannot freeze. Apple and cherry are two that you can freeze beautifully. Highly recommend. Let me see, just for fun, how much I have. I'm supposed to have 715 grams. But obviously that's too much. And the reason I care is because I did scale the filling spices and the starch, so I don't want to mess it up completely. But I'm just curious, and sometimes I do things just to get information. Do you cycle your frozen foods? I absolutely do, and I don't even really like to use a freezer a ton. When I buy a lot of butter, I use it, but I keep it moving. And if I know, I almost do it in 3-month increments. Like right now, I'm using up a bunch of stuff. So one thing that I do, and if you watch any of my organization videos, is I literally walk around and say, ooh, this fruit's been in the freezer a while, or this has been in my cabinet. And then I look for recipes to use it up. It's a good way to get rid of ingredients that are getting older and then just use them. So how do you freeze blind baked pie crust? Do you blind bake first or freeze first? You can do it either way. I would prefer to freeze the dough and then pull it out, blind bake it, let it cool, and then fill it right away. I think you get a nice flow of food, a nice touchstone to where you are in the process. And yeah, because then you don't have as much freezing and thawing. I am making an apple pie. FIFO, FIFO. All right, FIFO is the rule of law. So I am looking for 715 grams. Let me see. And I estimated a couple different ways, and it doesn't have to be exact. They're just apples, but that's 750, 725. I need 715. There we go. So look, I have just a little bit of left. I could throw them in there, but I'm going to put them aside. I can eat them, or I can add them if I need them. No problem. Okay, so, oh, I wanted that. Now I got a conundrum. Let me grab a deli cup because these probably will end up being a snack. So I'm going to transfer this to my bigger bowl because I need a bigger bowl for mixing. Get rid of this. Okay, here we go. Okay, so into my thing, I'm going to melt the butter. Just give it a couple seconds in the microwave. All right. And basically, you just put the stuff in, including the cornstarch. That's what's so nice about apple pies are easy. Salt, cornstarch, cinnamon, lemon juice, sugar. This is a nutmeg. I'm not going to scale this. I love fresh nutmeg. All right, this is, I love how it looks. Is that the prettiest thing? Like, I think this should be a fabric. It's so beautiful. It smells so good. Okay. Done, done. The butter does not need to be melted into oblivion. It will continue to melt as it gets in here. All right, so I'm going to get all my butter in here, and I'm going to use my gloved hands, not because it's a sanitation issue, but because I like to use my hands to mix many things. Let me get the apple pie, or the crust, I'm sorry. Here's the crust, and I like to build right onto a pan. So I have these all on the ready. This is my pan with the parchment, and then my crust, which I got out of the freezer, and I egg washed. Can you see the egg wash? It's kind of shiny. I did not egg wash the bottom, I just egg washed the edges. I do it very lightly, and I'll show you the egg wash after I get these all made. Very lightly, very evenly, one time, let it dry for 5 minutes, and I apply a second one, and I make sure to get in every crack and crevice. All right, so now I'm going to take my mixing, and I'm just going to stir it. And the reason I like using my hands is because I can feel, and I'm imagining, that I'm moisturizing every single apple. And if I don't use my hands, I can't really feel. And this way I do this scooping thing. Very gentle, lift, and then sort of massage. That way I can take a look if I missed a seed. It's kind of quality control, and sometimes they stick together, or all of the cinnamon will go on one apple. So I just like to distribute it, especially with the cornstarch. And I will tell you, I did not add my cornstarch to the sucrose, but you can to help distribute it. Cornstarch is going to lock up some of the moisture. That's what helps create a thick syrup and keep the moisture from just staying wet. And it doesn't get activated until it gets really hot. So cornstarch, I think, is a relatively neutral flavor. I think it's great for apple pie. I don't think it's great for every pie, but I think it's great for apple pie. So there we go. Lovely. Lovely. Pretty, pretty. These are my relatively evenly sliced, nicely spiced, distributed. You can see it's not, there's no loose water, meaning water that lives in the lemon juice, etc. I am using an aluminum. My favorite kind of pie pan is aluminum. And you can transfer it to a prettier one, but I like the heat transfer. All right, so watch how I do this. I take this and I don't push it around. I put it toward the center and I lift. And then I add more and lift. And I keep adding to the center, because eventually things are going to fall to the edge. I don't need to push them there until I've got everything in here. And at this point, I can take a spatula or an apple. My hands now are messy, so. And I can pour this in here. And this is my juice, my cinnamon and all my sugar, my lemon juice. And it just sits on top. And then I'm going to take this, and with my fingers, rather than pressing it down, I'm just going to take my fingers to create some space in between, and I'm going to tuck and make room. Okay? I don't want them overhanging. I want to mount it toward the middle and then some toward these edges because this will fall. And quite frankly, I could do more apples if I wanted to. All right, so I'm going to take off my gloves and I'm going to show you, oops. Okay, clean up the parchment. So that's my apple pie. And if I wanted to, I could put that in the freezer now. Once it's 100% frozen, I would wrap it twice, label it with the date that I made it, and then leave it for up to 3 months. But I'm gonna put a crumble on here. So that's what it looks like up close. Do you see how I didn't push or try to get them organized? So I wanna go back to what I was saying. If I wanted to make this very decorative, I could put these apples, or if they were pears, in a beautiful spiral. You could do that with tarts. But for this, they fell into place, okay? I'm not gonna move them around a ton. I don't push them down because as they bake, they're going to get soft and fall down anyway with gravity. So I don't need to smush them. I need to leave them so that the heat and the steam can get in between. They will naturally fall into place. And then if you put a double crust, a lattice, or even this streusel, you'll get gaps. This will be way down here and mushed, and then you'll have this air gap. It doesn't look good. I don't like it. So this allows nature to smush it. I don't need to smush it. Mother Nature will. All right, so I'm doing a crumble right now. Yeah, it's gonna fall. Yep, you don't need to push them down. There's just no need to, again, unless you're making something decorative. And you know, the difference between a pie and a tart is tarts are meant to be beautiful. That's why I do pie tarts where like with pears I do pear tarts where I do it in these beautiful spirals and they're just gorge, right? With frangipane and stuff like that, all about the beauty. Pies are about how they taste. So if you've never had a pie you like, nope, I'm doing a lattice on the cherry, not on this. I'm gonna do streusel. So let me get the streusel and show you. Now this streusel was in the refrigerator. However, it could have been in the freezer in a Ziploc. That's the beauty of a raw streusel. Let me flip the camera and show you what's going on in my oven right now. So it has been in here for 35 minutes. Let's take a look. Oh, that's falling over. That means it was not hot enough. So I could have preheated my oven more. In fact, the butter that's sort of dripping is because my oven wasn't hot enough when I started. But it's not brown enough for me to turn down the temp, so I'm just gonna leave it. And I'm not gonna change the temp. We're just gonna go with what we have. It's not an emergency. I'm gonna put 20 minutes on. So anything that happens, like I know the oven wasn't hot enough, but when working on TikTok, it's like we do what we do, right? We do the best we can, not a big deal. Yes, I love rhubarb. I like rhubarb either roasted or partially cooked before I make it into a pie. Same with I learned with blueberry. You do half and half fresh. So there is a list. I have an entire playlist on my profile page of pies and tarts, and it's really everything. I've done a lot of work on that playlist. There are videos about every aspect of making a pie or a tart. And Joanne Chang has a rhubarb brown sugar pie that is to die for. I highly recommend it. So this is just refrigerated, and a streusel is nothing more than AP flour. This happens to be cinnamon, cold butter, which sounds a lot like a pie crust except with the spice. And what else goes into here? I forget. So when you mix it, you can mix it until it barely comes together, and you have little itty bitty pieces that you can use for really small mini pies or little mini uses, or you can do it until they're bigger. So what I like to do is have the little pieces, and I use spidey fingers when I do this so that I'm not crushing it. So you have your little guys, sort of like the little stuff, and then the big ones go on last. So you'll see how I put this on here. All right, so I'm gonna start adding it to my pie, and I'm gonna move the big guys out of the way. And again, you're gonna watch me do from the center. I'm gonna pile this on the center, and I'm gonna let it fall to the edges. And everything that I am doing, I have taught to hundreds of students. It's not hard, it's basic concepts that will help you with any pie that you make. So I'm gonna keep adding. So streusel is great because you can also bake it from raw and then use it as decor and add it later. But this is raw and it will get baked with the apple pie. So I'm going to keep adding more without smushing the apples. And then if I want, I'm going to move some of the little stuff into the holes, and I'll show you up close in 2 seconds. So I'm going to start turning it, and you could use a cake turn. Sometimes those things help. So as you can see, I'm going to fill this in there because I don't want this off of the pie. I want it in the pie. So I'm moving all these big chunks out of the way. So I want just the little like smaller stuff, because this smaller stuff I want to go get tucked in. And I'm not pressing it, I'm just letting it naturally fall. And I'm not crushing it, I'm using very gentle fingers. If the apples show through, that's not a problem. I am not pressing this. You have to imagine when it starts to bake that it will melt and find its way. And you want it to do that. All right, so then, let's see, I'm gonna take a deli cup and I'm gonna take out all the big guys just so I can use up, because I don't wanna save all of this. And these big guys can be baked and they're like nice little cookies. So in theory, you could make your apple pie, put a little caramel sauce on the plate or ice cream when you serve it, and then bake these and then put that on the plate with it, and it's like a cookie, and do it really dark. And so you can layer in the flavor and the texture, and you can get as creative as you want. I love streusel because the streusel you can make any flavor. I have a coconut recipe, 5-spice, almond. You don't have to use flour. You could use, nut meals. You could do hazelnut. Possibilities are endless. The trick is when you make the streusel, it's a lot like making a pie. You do it on the paddle, a pie crust. You do it on the paddle and you stop when you get to the size that you want. So look at that, isn't that gorgeous? You guys are gonna die when you see what I do at the end of this. All right, so it's gonna go over there. And I'm gonna be freezing this. So it's just gonna sit here. I'm not gonna disturb it. And the beauty of this is that the way I have it right now, I could just leave it. And when this freezes, I'm not gonna worry about bumping it or having it fall apart. It's gonna be frozen. It's gonna go in the oven. So I'm gonna try not to move it around too much, but look at that. Nice and tall. See what I'm doing? Clean up the tray. Okay, so then here's the beauty. You take these big guys, or whatever size you want, and you tuck them in for beauty, for looks. So I will find either a gap or I will space them out. And I've talked about the magic triangle, so you want to make sure that if you're trying to make an award-winning pie and you want it to look good, that you're going to pay attention to the 3-dimension of the pie and make sure that you've covered all your bases. I'm not going to put that right on the top. Okay, so there we go. So I have a little bit of this left over. I can refrigerate it or freeze it. And just like with any ready-to-eat food, if I'm going to bake these, it should be within 7 days. And if you make your crumble too wet, just put it in the refrigerator on the tray like I had it with no cover. It'll dry out. Just give it a day and then you can store it. I'm going to freeze this though. I'll make it another time. It's gorgeous, isn't it? This pie, I wish I could ship my pies. Like someday I so much want to see you guys in public so that we can all make this and share it. But watch what I'm going to do. Where is it? Oh, here it is. Okay. Pie dots. These are my pie dots. It's just butter. Pre-chopped cubes of butter, about 1/4 inch, that I am going to place around so that when it goes in the oven, they're going to get frozen in. When it goes in the oven, this butter is going to melt and get incorporated and create lovely mouthfeel, flavor, and it's going to interact with the lemon juice and the cinnamon, and it's just another way of getting a little bit more butter in. And let me see. So you just kind of dab them around, and with gravity, you don't think this way, you think this way. So if I put butter toward the edge, that's not as helpful. If I put it right there, as it melts, it's going to go straight down. So you want to think more toward the center of the top I mean, I don't know what to say. This looks pretty gorgeous to me. I think this is beautiful. So I am going to clean up the parchment, but it's not imperative because after this is frozen, I'm going to wrap it and it won't even be on a tray because I don't have room in my freezer for all that. The good thing about this is if I could fit 2 pies on here, I would move it over and then I could do a second pie because I am making a cherry pie. But if you make a hand pie or a small pie, doesn't matter what size, the principles and the procedure that I just did all stays the same. I mean, are you guys dying? Look at that. Woo. It's very delicate at this point. I've really piled it high, but can you believe how that little bit of apple ended up being like that? So these recipes are on my link tree. The cherry pie one is not. If you guys want that, I can add it. I used to have it on there, but it's been a while. But all of these videos live on my page. You won't miss them. All right, let me put this in the freezer. You want to put it in flat and let it remain sort of unmoved. All right, let me show you what inside of my freezer looks like. Okay, there's my pie. These are the cherries for the pie. That's the pie I just made. I should not have the freezer open this long, but you guys get it. And then this is the crust that we're going to be using. So I'm going to put it up here for now. And the key to a home freezer is don't overload it. So I will make sure these all have room to breathe. You need good airflow in a freezer. The biggest difference between a home freezer and a work freezer is airflow, really good ventilation. Now we're going to do the cherry pie. This is obviously not good if you're concerned about allergies. This is commercially made almond powder, almond meal. What I was going to do was take a little bit of this and sprinkle it on the bottom of my crust. What that does is it adds flavor, but it absorbs moisture if you're worried about a soggy bottom. But you won't get a soggy bottom if you have a good high heat and you're baking on a baking stone. But that is what I would do. I would put the almond meal or any kind of nut meal and it would absorb moisture. So I didn't do it, I apologize, but that is always an option. All right, now I'm gonna do the cherry pie. No, I don't add instructions because that's where the videos come in. I don't want you to have instructions because I want you to think about how the process I show you applies to everything. Because I want people to make connections. I'm actually trying to change the industry for the home baker. I want to bridge the gap between what professionals know and what you guys know. And oftentimes in home baking books, they give you paragraphs of instructions, which in my opinion does nothing but confuse people. So you saw how I worked. I'm going to do exactly the same concept with my cherries. Thank you so much. I'm glad you guys are learning. It's my favorite thing is when I used to teach in person, I would see people and they'd be like, oh, and it would like all the years of making a pie and maybe they had one problem. And then when it's solved, they're just like, I get it now. So what I'm asking for you guys to do is rather than learn a recipe and jumping around recipe to recipe, find one that's fundamental and then learn the reasons behind everything so that you can make decisions depending on the shape of your apples, the temperature and humidity in your kitchen, your oven, your crust. Your crust is going to be different than mine. Our crusts are going to be different for about 100 different reasons. So this is about making connections. And I'm actually trying to teach you how to think like a baker versus just reading a recipe. That's what I'm hoping for. That's why I want you to think like the ingredient because everything begins and ends with what the ingredients want. The ingredients don't care if you're in a hurry or if you waited till the last minute. All they care about is that you've paid attention to what they need. All right, I'm gonna do the cherry now, okay? This is very exciting. I love cherry. And you know what, this time I'm gonna remember the bottom part of my crust because this is important to me. Staying clean is, to begin with, I'm gonna give you one way to stay cleaner in the kitchen. First of all, you know, I scale and I do everything in advance. So right now I don't have a bunch of junk everywhere. I literally go and pick up my tray and it's like, this is my recipe. So then I clean everything. But you will notice I don't even have to think about it. Part of being the pastry practice, the practice of pastry is about building systems that you practice every day. And if every day you remind yourself of this one thing, this is what I'm going to tell you. In between doing tasks, when you are done with one make sure that this area, which is your dedicated work area, is cleaned and everything. Because then when you start the next thing, you're starting fresh. So I love clean in between. It's my favorite thing. I clean in between everything. Mentally, I clean mentally in between things. Just today and last night, I was cleaning out a lot of notes because I feel like things are about to change things are like in movement. Things are in transition right now. So I went through all my old notes and I got rid of a lot of things I don't need anymore. So I clean in between when I'm ready to start the next thing. So if you make a pie and you get it in the oven or back in the fridge, before you start making dinner or start the next project, get everything over to dish, wipe everything down, be ready, and you get your clean spot. And I am using a dish bin over there, so I put everything in there, but I only have one basin sink, and I know how to work in a professional kitchen because it's what I've done. But it's more important that you learn to control the chaos from way back here. Plan out what you want to do. I have a list of things I'm doing. I follow the list. Plan on what recipe you're doing, read through it in advance, scale in advance, and then when you're ready to go, look at what I do. This is going to go fast. You guys ready? All right, we're doing the cherry pie. My cherries are in the freezer. In this case, I did weigh them, just like with the apples. And they're frozen, and frozen cherries are great. IQF is instantly, what is it? IQF stands for quickly frozen, instant, I don't know. But it's what they do when they pick the fruit, and it's what you buy at the store. And I like cherries that are from cherry growing regions, and we were spoiled in Michigan, Illinois, and Wisconsin to always have bags and bags of cherries in the freezer at the grocery store. But I'm in Connecticut now, and it's hard to find locally grown cherries. I also heard that they had a devastating year with cherries, like last year or the year before. So I'm just using organic frozen cherries. You can use any. So here are my ingredients. So that was my apple pie I'm done with. This is my recipe for my sour cherry bourbon. And this one happens to have instructions because I got this from, I think, Sister Pie. It's the tart cherry bourbon. Sour, yep, Sister Pie. Sour cherry bourbon pie from Sister Pie. So if you don't have the Sister Pie book, I can recommend a gluten-free brownie in there. A lot of the tricks that I've learned about pies, I learned from that book. And it's in Detroit, which I grew up right outside of Detroit, 20 minutes from there. All right, so we've got cherries in the freezer. I have bourbon, 33 grams. I have almond extract. And orange, and I put it in here as a reminder. So even though it's the zest of one orange, this is convenient. That's why I love the deli cups. The turbinado sugar or raw sugar, instead of regular sugar, sucrose, we're using raw turbinado sugar. And tapioca starch, which is my thickener. It's going to keep the glaze around the cherries very bright red and not muddy and very clear, which I love. And then kosher salt, because you always need some salt to balance everything out. And I'm going to be putting a lattice crust on here, and I'm going to show you how I make a cherry pie. I can smell the pot pie, so I'm going to take a quick look at it. Let me take a quick look. Ooh, it's starting to get brown. So I think I'm going to turn the temperature down, let some heat out, start, and turn it back on. I'm going to go ahead and do 30 minutes since I'm turning the temp down. Start. All right, so I think I can use a smaller bowl. I'm going to be using the other crust that's in the freezer. It's still in there. The edges, inside and out, have been egg washed twice, and I'm making a cherry pie. You don't need to use the bourbon. However, it does add good flavor. So if you take it away, try to balance it with something else. Okay, that's a great question. Is it sour? Why is it sour? Is it still sour after you bake it? That all depends on the cherries that you use, because cherries come in sweet cherries and tart cherries, and we're going to be using tart cherries. If you use a sweet cherry, which a lot of people will tell you is not appropriate for a cherry pie, you have to adjust the amount of sugar you add, which is going to affect the thickness of the syrup. But you always have to remember that when you change one thing, you have to make sure that whatever lives inside there. So if this is just a cherry tart variety, and you can read on the bag, it'll say if it has sugar added or not. The tart variety is going to stay tart, and there is no sugar added in mine. So sometimes it's a tart cherry, but they add sugar. If they add sugar, that means you're going to have to adjust your recipe, right? So we're going to go ahead and put that in there. And I'm going to add these ingredients, which are extract, bourbon, woo. And there are people who don't want alcohol in their food for other reasons. And so if you have non-drinkers or people who are opposed to it for whatever reason, just be aware that that is very important. Do fruits with higher water content need more starch? Yes, they absolutely do. Like if I were to substitute out peach, I'm going to have to reduce other things and accommodate for the fact that peaches have more water than the cherries do, right? Here's my salt, my tapioca starch, and raw sugar. Now, isn't it cool to use raw sugar? A little bit more molasses that's been left behind in the process. Turbinado sugar is not, I always thought it was a fancy name. It's turbinado because they put it in a turbine, and they spin it and spin out a bunch of the stuff, and this is what they're left with. And this is going to give you different flavor, and theoretically it's going to melt just like sucrose does, but it's a little different. I think it's a really nice addition personally. Now the zest of one orange, I love navel oranges for baking, and I love, and this just, I wish you could smell, smells so good already. It's like the combination of the almond extract and the bourbon is lovely, but I am going to zest. And I talk a little bit about zesting in my videos. It's really important, whatever your dominant hand is, not to do this because you are grinding it and getting the pith. And this might not seem like a big deal to you, but I can tell you, a lot of people don't like zest. And I mean, like, I've seen a lot of people in my classes throughout the years be like, oh, I hate zest. Do we have to add the zest? And once again, I will say it's because you haven't had zested properly, or you've had it improperly zested and you assume it's bitter. And when you do this, you can't control how deep you go. So you want this, I'm right-handed. This is my less dominant. So this I can control and I can go gently. Yes, you do cook off the alcohol, but there are people who are religiously or ethically opposed to alcohol, and I can speak from personal experience. There are students who cannot have alcohol in their chocolates, their bonbons, and their pies and other things. This is just a consideration if you're concerned about people that you're serving. So yeah, it does evaporate, but it can be a problem. So when you do this, you can go back and forth, but you are still going to see orange. It's not going to turn white, and I am getting all of the zest that I need without going into the white. It still looks orange. Mine will look like that. And you can slide it back and forth because the sharp parts are only in one direction, you know, or you can do this, but I just go around and try to get everything, but I'm just going with a very, very light touch. And once you have taken the zest away, beautiful. Once the zest is gone, your orange is going to dry out. Now I'm just going to eat this because I want it after I'm done here. I'm going to be hungry. But if you are going to store it, you want to wrap it in plastic wrap so that it doesn't dry out. So if you have a lot of zest and you need lemon juice, you need to coordinate your production schedule so that you're getting the zest first before you start squeezing the lemons. I've made that mistake where I, got all the juice and I'm like, shoot, I didn't know I needed, a little bit of zest. All right, so when I look at this, I can still see a couple areas that I could get a little zest from, but look at how orange it still looks. So when people go below the surface, they are just adding a bitter tannin, basically, taste to it. All right, here's the other thing. I am not going to bang this. If you want your tools to last as long as mine do, you're not going to start banging things, okay? You are going to use gentle, thoughtful processes to get what you need. Now, if I had a liquid that was going in here, like I could have taken the bourbon and poured it on here, but I have plenty of orange. I'm not concerned about it. And then I can gently tap. But for people who are banging constantly, I have seen, these are not cheap, $20 to $30. I've seen where the handle comes off of them, they're bent, falling apart, and a mess. So don't do that. So my orange I'm going to eat in a little while. Oh my word, is that the most beautiful I wish you could smell it. Absolutely gorgeous. And you don't want to zest in advance. Never zest into a container or weigh it that way, because all your essential oils, which is what gives, they're volatile, they're very sensitive. So right now, they're all in here. I haven't lost any, which is amazing. So let me get the crust. This is my crust, and I already have it egg washed. It's frozen. I made it last Wednesday. If you want to see that video, go to my YouTube, and I edited it, so it's just about the pie. I like this because my sides are very upright, and it's not perfect, but look, it's beautiful. It's going to be great. Nice and deep, and I'm going to do the same concept I did with the apples. I'm going to mix it up, and then I'm going to put it in from the center so not to smush it down. You can zest into, it's best to zest into fat, best to zest into your product like I am, or into the sugar, but you just want to think about not leaving it behind somewhere. That's all you need to think about. What else could we substitute the bourbon for? So bourbon has a really strong, bright, uplifting flavor that is very nuanced. I mean, this is an older, it's not here, but what kind of bourbon I mean, obviously you don't want to use like, maybe you do a single barrel or something like that, but you're looking at possibly bitters, which I actually have here, because when I'm done, I like to have a little soda water with ice, and I use these bitters. What's beautiful about these bitters, which are artisan bitters, they make them literally, they take oranges. I know people who work here in Milwaukee at Bitter Cube. You take the orange peels, the zest, and they make these. And what you do is, I wrote down the flavor profile. So for this, I could add cocoa, fennel, vanilla, no. Chamomile, cinnamon, jasmine, no. Caraway, cardamom, court, no. Allspice, pepper, ginger, grapefruit, hibiscus, cinnamon, and nutmeg, that's going in here. So if you don't have the bourbon, you can always take an artisan bitter that's done half the work for you. These people have thought about how this all pairs. So you can bump up the flavor using artisan bitters. Great question. Let me get gloves. And I'm going to get my lattice because I make it in advance. I make it in advance on the table. I refrigerate it separately that way after I've cut it. And again, all that's in my YouTube video. And then I'm just gonna slide it onto here. And when I pull it out now, it'll give it just a minute to soften up. And it might be a little small. A lot of this is just sort of, so I could use a spatula. I don't need to use my hands. I get my gloves from Amazon. But I like using gloves because I like to feel the food, but I don't want to just use my plain hand. I know you can. I know that clean hands are clean, but I often, because I'm in the sink all the time, I just get sensitive to all the water and the, things that sting, and I have hangnails and things, so I just like to keep it clean. This is cream cheese. So instead of putting the almond meal on the bottom, which I could do, which should I do, you guys? Almond meal with the cherry or the cream cheese on the bottom. Both of these are solutions to keeping the moisture from being a problem. So I'm going to take an offset spatula. This has been at room temperature. You want it to be soft, and it does not need to be thick. We are talking about, we're talking about a very thin layer. I like the offset because I can get an angle at it. If this is hard, you're just gonna not tear up your crust, but it's gonna be, I'm gonna do both, because why not? So I will show you what this looks like. So this is not going to make your shell impervious. It's not gonna fix an overly wet, filling, because you need to have a good balanced filling with the right amount of thickener. But what it's going to do is add a little bit of flavor, and it is going to protect your shell just a little bit. And I did get this from Sister Pie. So I get all these little ideas from the different cookbook writers, so just a little bit. And then this is my almond meal, and I really like commercially made almond meal for a lot of practical things like macaron, things like that. I like to make it myself if I'm not concerned about it being this fine, but this is very fine. So this is the almond meal, and maybe I'll just sprinkle a little bit and shake it around. So this is frozen. I don't want to waste a ton of time, but I'm going to spread it around, and this is going to absorb moisture as my cherries release their juice when they're baking. So those are two little tricks I can give you, which I find to be helpful. And then here's my beautiful cherry, and I am going to lift from the bottom up. I'm not stirring, squeezing. I talk a lot about the little details and how they make a big difference. Isn't this beautiful? And I like this because I can feel, and even if I put this in here without mixing it up well, quite frankly, pies are magic. They do a lot of the work for you. It's not going to be a problem. But there we go. It smells insane. If you can do the bourbon, do the bourbon. Yes, this, and you know, leave it to someone in Detroit to combine the cherries with the bourbon. Like, that's really smart. All right, so I'm not going to lift the bowl up and pour this in here. I really like having control. I like feeling, because then I can choose, like this has a lot of stuff in it, and I'm put it right in the middle, and I'm lifting my hands up, see? And so it's going to spread around on its own. I don't have to spread it around. In the center, lifting. At no point did I push down. I don't have to spread things around. They'll do it, trust me. Okay? And then once I do that, then I can take what's left in here of this filling, which has my tapioca starch, which is a thickener. I need it, so I can't leave it out. Now on the apple, I have put a lot of juice because we would end up with these giant bowls with a ton of juice at the bottom, and we would just go around and sort of distribute them. It was never a problem with the baking. All right, so here's what I'm going to show you, and then I'm going to move it around. Isn't that gorge? So I am putting this on here, so I'll show you what I'm doing. This is my lattice crust that I made in advance, and if you want to see the videos on YouTube. It's been mishandled a little bit this morning, so it's a little broken, but I'll get it on there, it'll be fine. And here, let me get a tool that you guys will love. This is by Fat Daddios, okay? It's very heavy duty, and I like it because you can actually get under a pie and lift. Look at that, it won't bend. So I love it. So what I'm going to do is take my lattice crust, and I'm going to get it on here. And then I'm going to, it is broken, and I apologize. It's not going to be perfect. But the reason I do this is because now I can slide it onto here. Okay, so that's how I recommend doing it, to be honest. My parchment I can reuse. So I'm going to put this here. I have my lattice. And what I'm going to do is I'm not going to press, but I'm going to let them fall so that none of them are going to eke over the edge. I just want to make sure they're not all on the edge. There's not much I have to do. So then I'm going to take this. It's not going to look great because I didn't do it perfect. And it's too small. Classic. All right. So this is what it looks like now. And I use the cake ring to cut it to size. But you need to figure that out depending on what size pan you're using and everything. So what I'm going to do is spread this out so it looks nice. I'm not going to push it down. But if it were too big, I would let it get a little bit softer, and then I would tuck the edges in. But right now, I'm just going to do that. It's not perfect, but it'll look cute. And then I will take loose pieces and fill them in where need be to make the finished product look good, even if it's just a little piece here and there. So this has already been egg washed. It's all ready to go. Oops. Yeah, again, not perfect, but. So now this is, yeah, again, not perfect, but. I make it, refrigerate it or freeze it. I refrigerate it, egg wash it, and then freeze it. So it's already got the egg wash on it, and then here's another trick. This is also from Sister Pie, Sugar Sugar, which I think is so cute. This is half sucrose, half raw sugar, and when you apply it, you want to use pinchy fingers and get up close so that you're mostly just doing the lattice. Now you can use just sucrose, raw sugar, you can use anything you want. But I love that they mixed them. It's a very thoughtful little refinement that I highly recommend. The more you add, the more likely you are to get it very dark. So you're gonna have to decide how much caramelization you want, and that's it. Once this goes in the freezer and becomes completely frozen, I wrap it twice with plastic wrap and label it, and I can bake this from frozen anytime I want, but I do have to build in a good oven time of a couple hours, if not a little bit more. I know, it's good. Now, if I were in a competition or whatever, I would have had 10 of these made. So I was using the most beautiful and perfect. But yeah, all right, it's going in the freezer. Let me see if I can turn you to go with me this time. See if I can make this work. Maybe I'll move my chocolate chip cookies. This is for my extravaganza. Yep, and I have a freezer thermometer here as well. And the apple pie is freezing nicely. Okay, so we have other stuff to do. So this is fun. We're getting close to so many little things that I wanted to cover. I'm so glad. All right, let me put these over here. And I will show you just a couple things. These are my pie weights. And I have done a lot on blind baking, okay? You can use dry beans, dry rice. You can even use sugar. But really, I love using pie weights. They're the perfect weight consistency. They stay clean. And I really like them. So I've had this thing for years, and I really do want to buy some more. So my egg wash is a very easy egg wash, and I was just going to make it really quick to show you. So this is the egg wash that I made, and I always work out of a half deli cup, and I like a natural bristle brush. I used this morning. I wash it, and then I wrap it so that it stays nice in parchment while it dries. But I love a half deli. I like it because when you're painting pastry, you can't leave this. It's too short and too tall, So this is what I work out of, but then I put it in the deli cup that's the smallest. Now I'm gonna make a fresh one real quick just to show you how fast egg wash is, and this is a back pocket recipe. But then I'm going to combine them. But the date that goes on the egg wash is the oldest one. So this was made yesterday. So yesterday's date is going to go on the combination, even though this is made today, because you want the oldest, weakest link date, okay? So to wash a pastry brush properly, you want to treat it like paint brushes. And people who paint with acrylics and oils and stuff, they spend a lot of money on their brushes, and they don't want them to get ruined by improper washing. And it's the same for pastry brushes. This is glued in. So you don't want a lot of water. You don't want this soaking in a sink. You don't throw it in with the dishes. You rinse this with water, hot water, and then you take soap, and whether it's on the bottom of the sink or your hand, and you go back and forth. You don't do this. You want to keep the bristles nice, and you get the fat, and then you rinse. When it is all done, you shake out what you can, and even this is a little splayed because it's not completely dry. You take clean paper towel, and I do this every single time. I take my wet bristles and I get them all in the same direction, and then I take my paper towel and I do one roll, and I go very slow, and then I bend it over, and they get stored nice and flat. This gives an air gap so these can dry. This holds it into shape because you don't want a really fluffy one. And this is fluffy because it's not dry all the way. But the egg wash is egg wash, wipe it off on one spot, and when you rest, you turn it around so you have one pull off, one mess. This thing should not be a disaster. It should be clean. We are also working with raw egg. So if you egg wash, touch eggs, or anything, you have to sanitize and wash your hands. That is a absolute. Salmonella does not just live on the eggshell or inside. It lives on the chicken, in the egg, on the egg. It's everywhere, okay? So you want to separate out the egg stuff, raw egg, from everything else. This is an individual thing, okay? I just like working out of aluminum, and a lot of people think that's ugly, so you can bake a pie and transfer it. But here's how I'm going to make. I'm going to make the egg wash very quickly. So I'm going to wash my hands because I'm going to be touching my salt. When I touch eggs, I end up washing my hands several times, but I'm going to show you how this is done. So I have 2 eggs, and I'm going to work out of this container. Into one container goes 1 egg, and this is getting composted. And then into the second is going to go a yolk. If you separate eggs, they are easier to separate when they are cold, but typically we use eggs when they're room temperature. So I'm going to put the egg white in here. And it's not like making a meringue. It's not like a problem if you get, you know, too much white or whatever, but we do want to control. So this, I'm going to save for later, transfer my egg white to a smaller container, because you always want to save everything in the smallest container that you can. And I've worked in a lot of places that the egg wash is a basic, simple egg and egg yolk mixture, usually kind of like a quick ratio, and then a good pinch of salt, which helps denature the proteins and kind of thin it out so it's a little easier to paint onto your beautiful crust and things like that, because you know, proteins glob, they grab onto each other. And here are my instructions on what to do. But you add cream to color, okay? So I'm going to add, because my hands are clean, I'm going to touch my kosher salt. If my hands had egg on them and I reach in here and add my pinch of salt, I've now cross-contaminated my salt, which is dangerous. The other thing is you do not want to add the salt to the eggs. It will burn them until you're ready to go. So I am ready to go. I'm going to get the cream. Now, if the cream is chunky, some people think that means it's bad. That's the fat. Just shake it up. You want the fat. You want to preserve the fat. So you can do your egg wash either with a hand blender to get it very smooth. If you are doing a competition or very intense, you can sieve it through a fine mesh sieve. You want to get all the chunks, all the bits and pieces out. But this is just me doing it, so I'm going to do it with a fork. And I'm going to add just a little bit of cream, heavy cream to start. And I'm going to just not aerate so much as combine. And I can use this. This is ready to eat. This is like I can use it fresh food, 7 days. Now it's going to oxidize and turn bright orange and get really thin. But you can use it for 7 days no matter what it looks like. So an egg wash does a lot of things. It creates expansion because it keeps your dough or your bread or whatever you're egg washing moist so that it can expand before it gets hard or dries out from the oven. It also adds shine. So inside the egg lives moisture, protein, and fat in the yolk, and lecithin, which is an emulsifier, which makes things taste good and look good. The cream is a dairy, which has proteins and fat and water. And these things create the Maillard, in sugar, lactose, creates the Maillard reaction. So when you egg wash, you are creating a seal, which protects the dough oftentimes. It can help with expansion if you're doing like a dinner roll. And just for the record, if you use an egg wash, you don't use a proofer for your bread. It's one or the other because they're doing the same thing. They're delaying staling. They're keeping it moist longer. So the cream and the yolk and stuff add shine, flavor, color, and helps your crust go from like dull and dark to like shiny, beautiful, mahogany golden brown. And it adds a tiny bit of flavor. My only caveat is when you are doing an egg wash, it can't be gloppy. You have to look at it from the side with the light on it and make sure there are no drips, because when that bakes, you're going to have egg. It's going to look and taste like egg. So it's supposed to be thin and glorious and beautiful. All right, so this would be my egg wash. I've done more videos than I could say on egg washing. Check them out. Because I'm done with this, what I'm going to do is, let's say I egg washed and I made a mess and I'm all done. I am going to add it to this one because this is going to go in the refrigerator until I'm ready to use it for storage, and it has yesterday's date on it because the other egg wash was made yesterday. That's the weakest link. That's the date that I have on there so that I stay safe. All right. What else do we have? I've got some other stuff to talk about. And I'm going to sanitize real quick because of my use of raw egg. And the raw egg and salmonella is not something that just happens in the United States. I follow the food safety news every single day, and salmonella is a problem internationally, and it is something that's preventable through cooking and preventing cross-contamination. So there we go. Let me look at my list. Oh, okay, so I have a couple more things to do, which are fun. All right, let me get a cutting board. Okay, so this is crazy. For those of you who were with me the other day, we are working on pies and pie crust, but I made a crust for a quiche, okay? And I made the quiche, and it really was experimental. And I'm gonna make it some more, and I played. And I ended up, because I had a loose bottom pan, taking the quiche out of the pan to try to bake it, but that was a no-go. It fell apart, but that was an experiment, but I'm gonna show you what I'm left with. And it also tastes great, so who cares? All right, let's go see what's going on with our pot pie here. All right. So you can see that it's just gaining a little bit of color. It's not bubbling. That's just butter that dripped when I had the oven too cool. But I have this set to 295. I might turn it up just a little bit, but I'll check it in 30 minutes. I mean, this thing could bake for a very long time. Okay. All right, so here's my quiche. And this is funny. You're going to, you know, just understand it's all an experiment. There's nothing wrong with trying new things and not having them work. I'm okay with that. What I want to do is make a crust next time in my fluted pan with the loose bottom. Thicker on the sides, not with an edge this way, but an edge just here. Blind bake it, fill it with the filling, but have it be so that I don't have to bake it in the pan. I can just bake it as a shell. So I need the walls of it to be much thicker. So I wrapped it twice, and I made a quiche base and added to the quiche frozen broccoli and feta from a cheese farmer that we go to. So it ended up breaking, see that? Because I made initially the walls of the shell too thin and it couldn't hold. My goal is to make the walls thicker, and then as the quiche rises and cracks in the center right before the end of baking, pour more cream in there and let it finish, and being able to have this really beautiful darkly baked thing. And that's what I'm working on. So let me cut a piece. So this is shallower than it should be and everything, but and it's cold. So you can heat it up in the oven or pop it in the microwave and then heat it there. There we go. All right, let's see. It's gonna come apart. All right. So let's dissect this. There's the broccoli, very dark bottom, which I'm telling you, I have people come in my comments all the time saying everything I do is too dark, looks burned. It's not. It tastes amazing. Look at that side crust. Okay, remember I told you I was going to show you? Look how dark. All I can say is that is where the flavor lives. Okay, well that's on the floor, so no one's going to eat that. But let's see. So we're having this for dinner on top of the pot pie. That's just changing temperature. Oh, this looks good. So I didn't put any meat in here, but because what I do, and again, this isn't about a quiche. I'm going to do this separately and do a video. I took a ton of video. Once you make the crust, it goes in the refrigerator. You egg wash. I egg wash the whole thing because that seals up the inside with an egg wash so that this is very moist. It's just cream and egg and some seasonings and stuff. And then you blind bake it, then you egg wash it, it cools, and then you throw in frozen broccoli, cheese, whatever, sausages, like solids you want, then you pour the quiche over it, like the liquid, bake it, and then you can top it with more stuff. But it should bake dark on the top. This should bake all the way through. It should be dark, but see how dark even the top is? And it takes a very long time. And then let me show you what the crust looks like when broken in half. Okay, so this is a great picture. So this is when it fell off. Okay, so that's the front where the quiche part is. That's the side, and that's the back. So I'm going to break this in half so you can see the layers. Okay. First of all, can you see some of that in there? Some of the layering? Let me see. When I break this crust in half, Do you see how it's dark all the way through the middle? That's a good one. When this part right here is rolled, like in my pies, you'll be able to see all the layers. But what ended up happening is a lot of that came off because it was a straight, it didn't have a lip. But you can see the swirls and where I rolled the crust. So you can see the history of it. And it just tastes amazing. And the quiche can be heated up. It's very solid right now. You can serve it warm. I could microwave it for a moment and then put it in the oven. That gets it going, and then allow it to warm back up, or you can serve it cold. I love eating anything cold. So that's my quiche. And at this point, it's an experiment, but these pie shells, I use the same dough. Sweet, tart, apple, turkey, quiche, all the same. That's why if you have one basic dough, you're good to go. Well, this isn't good. This whole thing is wasted. Oh, it's too bad. All right, into the compost. All right, let me clean up here, and then I want to show you my lattice cutaway and answer questions. What else? Do I have anything else? Cinnamon streusel, quiche? Nope. I think we're making our way through. Let me show you my lattice and explain to you what I'm looking at, and then we'll chat and say goodbye. So this is my crust, and I'm going to turn the camera. I'm going to take off my apron, and I'm going to get my drink so that we can chat. I wanted to show you all my notes on pies. I print notes, keep notes, write notes, am constantly thinking. These are just the ones I wanted to use for this project. And then I wanted to ask you guys about a few functional things for the PoP. We need to pick the recipe for next week. Let me go real quick back to this, okay? I baked this just to show you what it looks like, okay? This is a first roll pie crust, flaky style. I baked separately so I could show you what it looks like when you go deeper. You leave it flaky and you bake it a little longer. Look at the flake. So these dark edges, it's like with a croissant. Look at that. Look at, that's basically is sort of lamination, even though I didn't laminate. So if you are going to a store and ordering pie and it's all this color or lighter, much lighter, looks raw, not good. This is the back. This is what the back looks like. Look how beautiful and dark. So don't be afraid of dark doughs. What you're looking for, look at that flake. Flavor, butter, flake, airy, tender, flavor, even darker. Americans love underbaked everything. We just like food that's not cooked all the way. It's so weird. And I'm trying to let everybody know they shouldn't be afraid of it. I'm gonna eat it on, you should eat this on its own. But you see this dark part? When I go to a bakery, I look in there and I don't say, can I have the biggest one or can I have this and that? Because they should all be the same size. What I say is, can I get the darkest one? I want the darkest croissant, almond croissant, cookie. And so I promise you, my cookies are not overbaked. They're not dry. They are baked well. And I've had thin chocolate chip cookies. I've had the thick scone style, you know, all underbaked. Do they taste good? Sure, they're fine. They're good. It's just not what I want. So I'm just trying to open up the conversation. This is a pie crust. If you have never had a pie that you like, you have never had one baked dark enough. Maybe you've had a lattice crust that's just laying on the pie, doing nothing. It didn't fluff. I don't know. Don't buy it. Tell people, I'm not going to buy it. It's not baked enough. Let's start a revolution. Underbaked is the American way, and I'm sick of it. I'm sick of it. So I just love this. This is my crust. I'm going to eat this. So a lot of you ask, what do I do with the scraps? If you're going to play. You can make little squares and fill it with fillings. You can just use jam. Practice your egg wash. Practice your baking. Practice going as dark as you can and see how this tastes differently This part tastes different than this part. Look how flaky. It should make a mess, and don't ever use a knife on these things. You want to break it so you see how I retained the crumb? If I had cut that with a butter knife or a knife, I would have broken it. So anyway, that's it. That's all I've got. I'll show you my pot pie before we leave, but if I look at my list, I showed you my pie crust. We did an apple pie that's in the freezer, and you know what? I could wrap those right now, but they are not ready, and I don't want to mess them up. So I'm going to use patience to get the best product. I did a cherry pie. I have a pot pie that's in the oven for our dinner. I made a cinnamon streusel on top of my apple pie. I taught you guys how you don't smush things down, you load from the center up, and how you think about pie, cake, the most simple, a biscuit. Don't think about it as one thing. Think about it as a finished plated dessert. Pair every component, ingredient, topping, side part. Pair it, flavor, texture, color, temperature, and you will wow yourself with just a few simple changes. And that's it. The egg wash I do at 350, and I put it in and watch it. And you do it to color. And if, like with my apple pie, I have the egg wash on the exterior and I'm going to be baking it all at once, it's not been pre-baked. At some point, I am going to cover the edge so it doesn't get too dark. And the way that you want to do that is very carefully, because if you put anything over the edge before it's solidified, meaning it's really, really soft, the weight of it's going to smush it. So you want to wait until it brings on some color and you know you need to slow it down. I use this. And it's not perfect, but it goes around the pie. It's silicone, goes around the pie, and it rests on the edge so it doesn't overbake. But if you put this in too soon, it's going to crush your edge. And it's going to do that because the butter's too soft and the starches haven't dried out enough to solidify. Time, temperature, and moisture. And you're going to think about, what do the ingredients need? What does the pie need? What do you need? It doesn't matter what you need. I don't care if you're in a hurry. The ingredients are going to be like, I don't care. We're going to melt. We're not going to bake the way you want us to because you're in a hurry. I put that in the oven before my oven got hot enough, so I got melted, overly soft dough versus a nice steam and a good set. These are all on me. That's on me. I also have this style of pie crust shield. I find that working in a hot oven is challenging. I thought these would be easier. You just take them and place them on. They're a little narrower than the other ones, but I find that they fall off and then you end up having the oven open a long time. Sometimes it's best to just pull the whole thing out and get it on. So you're gonna have to find out which tool works for you. I don't like gadgets. You could make an aluminum foil cover, but at some point, if you wanna roast your pie, you might need to cover up the edges. I know it looks like let me show you what my pie's doing so that you know what I mean. Like, would this one be ready? So if I wanted to, this one does not need to be covered up. The edges are not too dark yet. And in fact, it's pretty light still. So you might be thinking, why don't I turn it up? And right now it is at 305, but I'm not going to turn it up. I'm not going to turn it up because I want to roast it. I want to slowly release the flavor. I did it hot and set it. Now I want to slowly build the flavor. You can use foil. You can make your own foil to cover that up. Totally. Totally. And I've done for years. I literally bought these to try them. Who makes this one? This is by Hot Dish. Hot Dish. They say it's adjustable and they have these like that little thing that you're supposed to put through like a buttonhole like that. Yeah, we'll try doing that in the oven. It's not easy. It gets hot. But, you know, the more you dial in your situation, the more likely you are to be able to use this. So, and I can show you this is my pie drawer where I keep, and I do not like gadgets. I don't like junk. But in here I have my crimpers. This is a pie thing that when you put it in, it keeps your pie fresh, and believe it or not, it works, or I wouldn't have it. See, you put it like that and keeps it fresh. That's my pie cover. I have lambs and different things for bread making. And, you know, these are for cutting doughs. And this is a bench brush, and a leveler is always a good thing to have around. What do I have back there? Oh yeah, and then I have a couple different varieties of, this is by Rose Levy. This is to help you roll out at the right width, but I'll be honest, I love Rose. I don't want to say anything bad about her because I love her, respect her, love her. However, I think these are Fat Daddy-O's. It's basically foam board, and I like those better. They're not flexible, they're easy to use, and I like them more. No biggie. All right. Woo! So we got through a lot today. We did it pretty quick. Laminated biscuits are next week, or this week, on Wednesday. So here's what happens. Here's what you guys need to know. This Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, I will be running a lecture and demo on a biscuit. I'm going to put the recipe on my Linktree as soon as possible, and I'm going to show you a technique where you spread out the biscuit dough, and then you roll it, and you pull in the edges and roll it again, pull in the edges and roll it. And then you chill that, you cut it, and you get an increase in the layering and the flakiness, even more so than just a good old-fashioned straightforward biscuit. And you can use laminating. I could have done with my pie dough, and this is another. You can cut pie dough when you cut it out into squares and then stack them and then roll them, and you're gonna get even more flakiness. There's so much stuff we can do, it's insane. So I will see you all on Wednesday at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time with a biscuit recipe that I teach you how to mix, roll out, get in the cooler to chill, and then I'll have some that I can cut, egg wash, and bake. And I will show you how to properly handle a dough like a biscuit dough so that you don't crush the edges, so that you get as much height as you can, that they're straight up and down and not slanted, that you don't have butter eking out, that you have a nice, beautiful, flaky, old-fashioned biscuit. And I need to look at the recipe, but my guess is we're gonna be using a little softer of a flour, but I don't know which recipe I'm using yet. So I will let you know. So keep track of YouTube for the replay on these videos, Linktree for the recipes, Substack for the written notes and additional information that tell you a lot about the ins and outs of all this. If you don't get all the info, you can fill it in with those notes. And then come back on Wednesday and learn more, and we'll just keep doing this. No, I'm making a biscuit, but it's similar to scones, but I'm going to make a biscuit, an old-fashioned biscuit. Oh yeah, biscuits are different in the UK. Nope, I'm talking about a sort of like a southern biscuit. Soft, buttery, very flaky. You can make sandwiches out of it, like a breakfast sandwich. You can eat it with buttermilk or not. Like there's a million ways you can make them. So we'll get into it. All right. Yep, biscuits in every country mean something different. Thank you for the reminder. That's great. A biscuit and a scone is very similar, but your recipe is going to be a little bit different. The scone is supposed to, should be a little wetter, and you're going to get a little bit less flaking. You're going to get a flake, but not like a biscuit. A biscuit, when you pull it, should literally have these paper thin layers that all add up to a biscuit. So a scone's a little different. Dave, my husband, the moderator, will get biscuits and gravy every time over just about anything else, especially in the American South. Yeah, you could definitely laminate a scone as well, 100%. It's going to come down to a difference in moisture content and the percentages and ratios. I love biscuits and gravy, but I don't have to order it because I just take a bite at Dave's. Why do you think professional baking tips are inaccessible to most people? I mean, I think it's a conspiracy. I think that they don't give the home baker the benefit of the doubt that you guys are just as smart as anyone starting on a program. Imagine me starting day one of the first semester with baking students. I do all the orientation. I train them how to be in the kitchen. I get them ready. And there is no difference between them and you. So why are we dumbing it down in our baking books? You should have a section at the beginning that explains the mixing methods and then gives you a recipe like this and nothing else. Because that's how a professional book, then you go back to the method. This is our recipe, scaled with percentages, which tells me a lot. And this says Paddle cold butter into flour, mealy or flaky, add 85% water. Those are the instructions. Quite frankly, that is all you need if you understand what you're doing. So rather than having paragraphs, I say we have to have more of this. My formulator is coming online this summer, and it's going to help all of you do this. And once you begin working with me in this way, you are going to see how I think. And I think books should be written this way. So you don't need gadgets. You don't need intermediaries thinking for you and saying, I don't think that the home baker can handle this, so I'm going to make it this way and over-explain it, and then have you guys clinging and white-knuckling there when it's really quite simple. Creaming method, mealy method, sable method. Like, these are concepts that once you get and you make connections, and you guys aren't all beginner bakers anyway. You're all intermediate to advanced bakers. So I am here to change the way people view home bakers. You are one day away from being a professional baker. So, you know, the bakers that come on to like that baking, the British Bake Off, they have a lot of experience, but they're not professionals because they don't allow professionals on that show. But they have a lot of experience and a lot of know-how, but all they need is someone to just give them the nugget. You take the nugget and you run with it. I'm giving you the nuggets. I'm nutshelling it. And I hope it helps a lot of you start to close the knowledge gap. Because when you get a muffin recipe and I say it's muffin method, you should understand what that means. It's simple. I love Martha Stewart. She's the reason I got here in 1993. Dave and I would sit down every Sunday and we would make a coffee and we would watch the Martha Stewart on PBS when it was like quiet. And they would just have the music and she would barely talk. I loved it. All right, well, you guys have a good rest of your weekend. Dave and I are going to do yoga because if we don't do it right away, we won't do it. Then we're going to go on a hike and then we're going to eat. I don't know what all of you are going to do, but I hope you have a wonderful Sunday. Happy baking. I'll see you on Wednesday. We're going to make biscuits, lamination style, and keep moving forward with our learning because that is what we are doing here. I rewrite recipes. Yep, awesome. Rewriting recipes, taking notes, thinking about them before you begin starting is where the learning begins. That's so smart. Happy Sunday, everybody. Have a good day. Thanks so much, you guys. Bye. Here's a quick follow-up to my live. After another hour or so of baking and a quick yoga class, Dave and I had some hot turkey pot pie with warmed up quiche. We went on a hike with Lou, and then the frozen apple and cherry pie got wrapped twice and labeled to be baked on a different day. Thanks for joining me. See you next week.